Hello and welcome to another episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. In this episode I shall be attempting a mini makeover on this Foden concrete truck, which is the No.21d, and they came out in 1968. And I've had this one for about 3 years now. And it was sent to me by a person called P. Mainen. P is not his name, that's his initial. And he comes from Leidschendam in the Netherlands. So it's had a lot of play, as you can see. There's not much broken on it. In fact, I don't think there's anything broken on it. It just looks very shabby. If you're a regular viewer, I don't like shabby models. I just want one of every first edition, the 1 to 75 builds in mint condition, or looking as best as I can in mint condition, just for my own pleasure. So there you can see the label on the roof that I put there when I first received it all those years ago, and it was from an unboxing, and the package was 177, and that's how I know who sent it to me. I thought I had a few of these, and they're different. These are the different ones. These are the smaller models, and every one of these has got a damaged drum, concrete drum on the back. As you can see, this one's completely demolished. That would make a good makeover. The problem is I don't have any spare drums, and I can't imagine a method of repairing them. I did experiment with my 3D printer a couple of years ago and tried to replicate the rear drums to try and make a fleet of these, but was never happy with the grain of the print, so I never followed up with it. Maybe I should touch that again, maybe have another shot at it, but it's all to do with how much spare time one has to dedicate to the hobby, of course. So first up, today I was a little bit annoyed, a bit miffed. There's a sign on the wall that says no cats allowed, and what do you know? Tilly, my second cat, is here in the room with me. Hope she doesn't break anything. Now, I have crushed my thumb in the hinge point of a skip about a week ago, and it looks pretty damned awful. So that is why I'm wearing this sticking plaster on my thumb, to save you sending me all the comments that I normally get about my fingers and thumbs. Now, having a look at this model, a lot of detail in it, typical of Matchbox of the time. Plastic drum on the back, lots of missing chipped paint, but I'm inspecting it and I can't see any damage as such. Like, the windscreen also looks in particularly good order. Here's a shot of the underneath. You can see there is 2 rivets holding the base on, and they're very small ones, and a worm gear drive thing that turns when you push it along the wall, and is supposed to push it along the wall when you push it along the floor, and it's supposed to rotate the barrel at the rear. So I've got to take these 2 rivets out to separate the model so I can strip it and clean it and paint it, etc. And they're very small. Normally I would drill them out and tap them, but I can't tap these because I do not have a tap small enough. And not only that, I don't have a screw to put in there to hold the base on. So what I'm doing is I'm using a slightly larger drill than you may consider necessary, and I'm attempting to just take the outer rim of the rivet off and not actually damaging the base plate or the rivet as such. I just want to take the flared end of the rivet off so I can maybe prise the base off, and it will just make that what's remaining of the edge of the rivet deform enough for the model to separate. First time I've used this technique, I think. So I'm looking for a point here onto which to lever. Oh, wow. That came off easily. Now, there is a good close-up of the worm drive and how it works. There's a big cog on there, hidden in the rear of the cabin. It's quite ingenious, and as you push it along the carpet, as I said before, the drum rotates and simulates what happens on the real machine. This, of course, is a concrete mixer, not to be a concrete mixer, not to be confused with a cement truck, A cement truck just has cement powder in it, and it just delivers cement to make the concrete. A lot of people call these models cement trucks or cement mixers, and I think even Matchbox are guilty of that. If you look at their catalogue, there is one smaller model that's called a cement mixer, which I think is incorrect. Now, looking at the scale of these models, here's one of the smaller ones, but surprisingly the rear drum is exactly the same size. So is the one on the small model big, or is the one on the big model small? That's the question. And you can tell that they are different scales by the door on the cabin. You see, one is large, enough for a huge person to get in. The other one's miniature, for a tiny little dwarf type person to get in and out. I've got to take the windscreen out so I can paint it without wrecking the windscreen. I've got this drill, as you may have seen before in a previous episode. It's got a very shallow cut which helps avoid drilling through the roof of the cabin. Luckily there's only one rivet here, so it should only be a minute or so to get it out. Because of the shallow cut, it's difficult to get the drill to self-centralise initially. So you have to sort of be patient until it starts to bite, and then you can go full speed ahead. Fair bit of swarf comes out there, the metal filings. I'm hoping just to bang this on the ground, and there we go, it's separated. So no leverage required, so there's no damage to the windscreen, and it's extremely good. It's an extremely good example, considering its age. There's no damage or wear and tear on it. This model's a bit trickier than most. It's got 8 wheels on it, 4 sets of axles. To remove the wheels, I use my Dremel and this cylindrical grinding stone just to take the end of the axle off. Very easy to damage the wheels when you're doing this. That's why I use my thumb to hold the wheel into the body of the model, and I use my finger to push on the other end of the axle to make sure it's fully extended to give me the best chance possible of removing the axle without damaging the wheel or the tyre. These were pretty tricky to get off because there was not a lot of metal protruding out the end of each axle. I had to take my time. It took longer than normal to get these out because of that. So far so good, no damage. Just checking all the axles are the same length, because I have been caught out before with other models that have several axles. You might get one axle longer than the others for some reason. So there's all the main bits pulled apart. Now we're just left with the chassis here, or the main frame, whatever you want to call it. Very good colour paint. So I just have a look in my cupboard of paints, and I find a red X7, and I think that's a good base colour that I can modify with other colours to try and make it exactly the same colour. I know it's different at this stage, I can see, but more than that, I open it up to see how much paint I've got, and I haven't actually got any. Once again, it's a trip to the shops. I go to Toy World, the only place I've found within an hour's drive of me that sells Tamiya paint. So I scoot down the back roads from where I live towards the city. So I went the whole hog. I bought loads of red and loads of yellow because I am trying to future-proof the channel, because I am intending to do some yellow and red models in my next videos. So using the Tamiya thinners, I shall be mixing up a little pot of paint that I can set aside to use to repaint this model. And it's always important to remember to do it before you paint strip the model. I have in the past paint stripped the model and then forgotten what colour it was. So that's how much I had, which probably would not have done the job. So I'm glad I took time out. I mean, it was over an hour round trip. As you can see, probably from the sunlight on the desk, the sun has moved a considerable amount in my absence. So I'm hoping to get this done before sundown. I'm showing you there that there's a little dribble down the thread of the jar, and that has been problematic for me for a number of years until it was pointed out to me how obvious it was that that's the reason that the lids were being glued on and I was unable to get them off in some of the episodes. So I now am in the habit of wiping the excess off if I remember to do it, to prevent that from happening. Now the red on this Foden concrete truck is very slightly orange, so it makes sense to add a little bit of yellow to the red when I'm trying to colour match the paint. Question is, how much is too much? Well, I think I pretty much nailed it first time round, so I'd have to say that I'm happy with that. Doing a double test on a piece of the model, a part of the model that has not been exposed to sunlight its entire life. And I think you'll agree it's a fairly good match. So I'm going to go along with that one. Sometimes when it's a big blob of paint, it's difficult to judge exactly whether it matches or not. So I do spread it around with a cotton bud. It gives you a better idea of the shade. Now, because I'm going to set this aside, I don't want it drying up too quick, so I just give a little bit of a splash of thinners in there to keep it fluid. It's probably good to go actually in the spray gun with that viscosity. It's very thin, perfect for using in the spray gun. So I snap that lid on of these little soy sauce pots that I've got and set it aside, and now I have to mix up the yellow. So there I'm showing you the X8 and X7 with the colours that I used. Once again, this colour is not a pure yellow. It also has a slight orange tinge to it. So the red had an orange tinge and the yellow has an orange tinge. The problem I have here is that the red is such a powerful colour, such a dark colour, it's like black. You only need to add a very small amount to change the colour of the paint. And I push it a little bit too far, I think. See that? Instantly it turned almost orange, and I was a bit annoyed. I should have left it. Instead of striving for perfection, I should have left it. I think that extra red might have pushed it over the top, I'm not sure. So again, I get the cotton bud out and spread it around a bit. And I think I'm going to run with it. So quickly get the paint off. Quite excited. I've got all this paint to use now, and that's one of the hardest parts, matching the paint. The rest of it should be easy. So I'm using the Polystripper paint stripper. It's like a clear gel. Very, very effective with the paint that Matchbox used on their models. Just a bit worried they're going to stop selling it soon, because it's got all nasty stuff in it. Must have missed a bit there, so I'll have to do it again. So after I've removed all the paint, I wait till they're dry, and then I give a little spray of undercoat, and I do like it because it shows all the details and bits and pieces that I've missed. For example, that little bit of red paint in there, I'll have to pick that out with a toothpick. Some interesting controls on the side there, and a ladder at the rear. Not much on this side except for a battery box. Quite often I call them a toolbox, but I've been wrong so many times. Yes, a battery box, I'm sure. And here's something I couldn't see before. S and P. I don't know if it's concrete or what, but something I hadn't noticed until I stripped it and looked at it with this very thin coat of primer on. Some lovely details on the back, some hydraulic rams, and that chute. Of course, the concrete comes out the top and goes down that chute, and there's a hinge point, so it can be extended to divert the flow of the concrete to where it is required. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of concrete trucks. I've never worked with them. I've only seen them turn up and just spew out the concrete. But I think this one's got a separate engine, perhaps, behind the cabin, so separate from the truck engine. And that's maybe what rotates the drum. Here's a lovely detail at the front there, a sort of a italic Foden logo right in the centre of the grille, which I couldn't read with the naked eye. But now you can see there's an enormous amount of detail on the front there. Even those tiny little door handles that are incredibly, stupidly small. Nice grille there too, very clean finish on the grille. And there's some kind of inspection hatches, maybe they can check the oil or change the air filter, if indeed there is a motor behind the cabin. Please let me know if you're familiar with how concrete trucks work. So this is always a little bit nerve-wracking, painting the model. As if you stuff up the painting at this stage, you have to basically reset and strip everything off again back to the metal. And it can be frustrating, and there's many ways to fail. Bit of speck of dust, fly landing on it, maybe it flying off the forceps and bouncing on the carpet. That's all these things have happened before. Gee, I'm looking old, aren't I? So I put on a light coat to begin with, just to basically test the airbrush out. And if I'm happy with the light coat, I then put on a reasonably wet coat, because that's the way you get the nice glossy finish. You know, if there's not enough paint on there, it won't go all glossy. So I've connected the chassis there on these angular forceps or hemostats, so that when I attach it to the magnetic clamp in the spray booth to dry, it'll be sitting horizontal. I try to have them sitting horizontal because in the past I have had some heavy paint run to one particular part of the model, and it has to be redone because it obscures some of the details. So I'm mindful of that these days. That's another thing I do that I maybe haven't shown before. Lovely colour, and I've got plenty to spare, so I can maybe do another red truck in the next week or so, and I'll have some paint ready mixed up if it's a standard Matchbox colour. That's something I don't always do, but we've had a lot of farming activity and dry weather and dust in the air, so I've put those freshly sprayed models under a glass cover to keep them dust free, even though they're in the spray booth. Sometimes the spray booth fan actually draws dust onto the model. I'm just showing you there one of the stages I use to clean the airbrush. You put your finger over the end and just run some thinners through it, and when you operate the spray action, it percolates in the pot, and actually it's like a washing machine cleaning itself. Just got to get a cotton bud in there and wipe out the rest of it, and we'll be done. Okay, well, because today's episode is about a concrete truck, I kind of thought to myself it'd be appropriate if I did like a little concrete project just to tie it all together. And I've had this on the back burner for quite a while. Julie bought this bird table to feed the parrots that reside in the area. I've never quite been able to get it stable, because obviously the ground's uneven, and I thought it'd be a great candidate just to make up a little slab of concrete using this frame that I've constructed, and yeah, I show Kevin the steps needed to make concrete, because it's good for him to maybe branch out in some kind of form of construction in the future when he eventually gets a job. So here I'm showing Kevin how to set up some boxing to contain the concrete mix and make it into a nice neat square. Now I'm checking the level there of the boxing only for the purposes of educating Kevin in the method of screeding that can be used, and you need to have the boxing level if you're going to screed it, but today I'm not. It's just a small little project just to get Kevin used to working with concrete, give him an idea of how to mix it. And I'm going to be using my little concrete mixer here that I've had for a number of years. It's had a fair bit of use. That's 2 bags of concrete, and I'm adding 3.5 litres of water, which is the recommended amount on the bag. That's enough, Kevin. Can you switch it off, please? Thank you. Now come over here and watch this. So I've got some reinforcement bars in the bottom there, just to make it extra strong. Not that it needs to be, but for the purposes of the exercise, I'm showing you what to do. I'm using a wooden float here, just to agitate the mix so that the coarse aggregate drops to the bottom and the fines rise to the top, so we can have a nice smooth finish to our little mini slab. And I bang the boxing with a hammer just to get any air bubbles out of the side, so there's no honeycombing when it's revealed after it's set. So we'll leave that concrete to set, and I'm back into the hobby room and I am cleaning the plastic parts with some warm soapy water. and checking them out for any damage that may have been missed. Tell you what, that windscreen is amazing for something that was made in 1968. A bit tedious cleaning tyres, but it's all part of the process. They are absolutely fantastic examples of tyres and wheels for these models. They are like they are brand new. Same for the windscreen, very minor scuff on it, but I'm going to dip it in the floor polish in a minute to make all those minor marks disappear, and this is going to look mint. I'm very pleased. Bit of grime in the back there that I couldn't get out. I did try, scrubbed it, but it wouldn't come out. But then again, it won't be seen when the model's back together. Here's something I found odd. Could be something to do with the injection moulding process, but there's a little stump in the bottom there, offset. Just struck me as being odd. Didn't expect to see that in there. So before I move forward, I'm going to dip the windscreen in the self-shining floor polish. I'm sure many of you have seen me do this before, but for some of you this would be the first time you're watching my video. So I'm just showing you, but actually on the back here it says it's not suitable for plastic. And I must admit that today is the first time I've ever read the label. But I can tell you it is good for plastic, so ignore the label. But do not shake it up, because it can go frothy and you end up with like foam on your little windscreen instead of a nice film of bubble-free liquid. So we're going to immerse this windscreen completely in this fluid, this self-shining floor polish. And believe it or not, it will self-shine. Hence the name. So just make sure it's completely immersed and pull it out. Shake off the excess. Otherwise it can get a little bit messy. I drop it on a tiny square of tissue paper and put a dust cover on it. This is actually an onion saver. Probably works better for that than it does as an onion saver. Even though the wheels and tyres are in immaculate condition, I'm going to give them a freshen up just with a very light spray of some of the Tamiya Gloss Clear Coat. So when everything's dry and cleaned and ready to go, this is what it looks like. These are all the parts. Quite a few little bits of fussiness on this model. I didn't show putting the wheels back on. I've shown it many times before. The method I use is a drill press and two concave nail punches, one pointing up, one pointing down, and I crush the axle between the two to peen the end over. I've shown it many times and it's very time consuming with the 8 wheels, and I didn't think that the video it was required. I've got this translucent silicone here. I'm just trying to dig a tiny little droplet out of it. Droplet size, a teardrop sized dollop of silicone, and I just place it in the roof of the cabin. I try not to, generally I try to get to the rear of the cabin, and I try not to get it over the original rivet, but I'm not doing a particularly good job today. It got away on me. Anyway, the reason is when I push the windscreen back in, if it's towards the front of the cabin, it could squeegee out of the windscreen, and you get a smear on the window, and you can't get it off. It can actually sort of damage the window finish. However, I dodged the bullet there, managed to squash that down. All the excess has gone towards the rear, so no one will know unless they pull it apart in the future. Here's these two little rivets that hold this model together, and they are too small to tap, as I said before, and I don't have any screws that would suit such small holes. So today I'm going to use a method I've used once before on the Greyhound bus, whereby I put a dollop of araldite beneath the end of the rivet heads, and then when I assemble the model, because it takes 5 minutes to dry, it will actually run down the shank of the rivet post and will hit the top of the base, if that makes sense, and it will glue the cabin in, and unless you dismantle it you won't know it's been glued. So it just looks genuine after it's put back together. It's impossible to make up a small amount of this stuff because it comes out the tube so quick, and you always have a little bit of wastage. Luckily it's quite cheap. So here you can see I'm putting the araldite that's been mixed just around that post, so there's none on the end of it, just around the sides of it. And then, as I say, if I'm quick, I've got 5 minutes to get this together, and then that excess araldite will run down onto the top of the red section there, where the posts are going to go through those holes. A bit tricky, and you want to make sure you don't get any araldite on your fingertips. As has happened before, you can touch the paint and leave a huge fingerprint, which is not good. On this model, that little tab at the front had to go through the slot underneath the cabin, and there we go, it went together beautiful. I don't even think I would have needed the araldite in all honesty, but it seems to have worked, and this is looking like a lovely little model. Now there's just one finishing touch. Now these models some of them apparently did come out with a silver grille, and this one didn't have one, so I guess I didn't bother painting the grille. I mean, in hindsight maybe I should have done, just to give it a little bit of bling. However, I'm trying to keep it, I guess, original, and I'm just touching up the ends of the axles there just to make them look factory fresh, like they've just come out of the factory, and they're all highly polished, just like it would have been out of the box on Christmas Day. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'm going to go outside in a minute and check up on the concreting job that me and Kevin did. So that was the No.21d Foden concrete truck. Okay, well, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If you have, please like and subscribe like normal, and I will see you again next week, hopefully. Until then, I'm going to check on my concrete and see if it's hardened. Oh, let's have a look. Oh no, you've got to be kidding me! I hate that bear! Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and recommend to your friends. Until next time, this is Marty saying goodbye. Daddy's made a new plinth, watch. Wow. Smash, come on.